Today, baby. Tell me when to start talking. Do I talk over the songs or what?
Yeah, you're gonna talk over the song. You ready?
Yeah.
Now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Let me tell you something. On this Tip the Scales, baby, we are tipping it in R. Kelly's direction. But I'm gonna dedicate this segment to calling it a time for atonement. If you have been listening to all the latest federal cases that have come up with all these super duper celebrities, you will notice that most of these men are in their 50s and 60s and 70s. Like R. Kelly, he's 56, 55 years old now. Ron Jeremy, I believe, is 66. And there's another gentleman named John of God. I'm going to talk about him this morning, but he's like, I believe, 70 something years old. And these are the three men that I'm going to highlight on today's segment of atonement. Now, by atonement, I mean this. You know, if you've been celebrated for 40 years, making millions of dollars off the public, you've got all these fans, you've been telling them all these things that they believe. We're eating up your celebrity status. You're giving us music. In Ron Jeremy's case, you're giving great pornos. And in John of God's case, you're healing the sick with God's hand. And you're not a surgeon. You're doing these surgeries with like some pocket knife and going up in people's noses and pulling out their guts and healing them. So these three men are the ones that are atoning now in federal courts around the world. First, we're going to start off with John of God. I'm not sure if you all recall who that is, but back in the early 1990s, there was a man in Brazil that they were calling John of God. He was known to be a faith healer, a spiritual healer that would lay hands on people and then do some crazy surgery while they were standing up with no anesthesia, no anesthesia, no antibiotics, nothing, and just taking basically some type of stick and putting it up in their noses and going like a surgeon, but he was pulling out some stuff and then they would have a little bleeding. They'd have them go wait in the waiting room and they were already healed. People from all over the world were going to Brazil, to this tiny town, so that John of God could pray for them and lay hands on this Brazilian man. He'd been doing this since the 80s, ladies and gentlemen. Well, in 2012, you may not remember, but Oprah Winfrey actually went to Brazil, to Sao Paulo, to go out there and visit, and then went to this tiny town where John of God was performing these surgeries, and she actually sat on his throne to talk about everything he's done. They had all the people there with the holy water, this whole thing. If you watch the video footage from when Oprah was there and they had some of the videotape of where he was doing some of these faith healings, if you notice there were women, and if the woman was standing up in front of him, he would say that the entity has possessed his body. The woman, everybody in the room is supposed to close their eyes. And John of God would take his hands and put them on both the woman's breasts, massage the breasts, rub them up and down on front to back and all, and sometimes up their vagina in the middle, then tap them on the head, put some stuff up their nose, and claim that they were healed. One woman, he put her hand down his pants, saying that he needed her to directly bless the entity herself. Another woman, he had, and this is good. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening at work, turn it a little bit down. If you have your kids in the room, turn it way down. Way down. He had semen from a recent ejaculation in his hand, and he rubbed it on the woman that he was supposed to be blessing, saying basically this ejaculate is going to help her. She did not realize what it was. She thought it was some holy serum that was blessed. Yes, he did, ladies and gentlemen. You can turn your bodies way back up and bring the kids back into the room. So let me tell you what else happened. Apparently, some of these women realized that they felt like they had been sexually violated, but they were too afraid to say anything. John of God had a few of his accusers come out against him, and then he would have his henchmen, his bodyguards, say that this is the Lord's work and that the entity is taking over John's body whenever he's doing these faith healings. So it's not him, and the entity should be allowed to do whatever the entity needs to put the Spirit of God in your soul to heal you from whatever mental or physical ailments that you have. Well, there were so many accusers and there were so many people that were trying to dead all the stories after the big Oprah Winfrey thing. John of God brought in millions and millions of dollars, and he was basically selling crystals. He sold one man a crystal for one simpleton, one Australian rich simpleton who I guess needed some faith healing really bad, bought a rock for $50,000. Yes, he did, y'all. he spent $50,000 on a crystal from John of God. So what they did was they had all these fake crystals around saying the crystal's going to heal you, whatever. So I guess between the ejaculate on his hand that he was going to wipe on the women and I guess rubbing them up and down on their breasts and rubbing them between their legs, I guess he thought that was the way that God was trying to heal the people. Well, that's not what the federal court said in Brazil. So he was brought up on criminal charges in Sao Paulo. But the women accusers, I believe that there were, there may have been like 25 or 30 women that came forward. And one of them was a young girl who was a minor at the time that complained and said at the age of 15 years old, he had sexually assaulted her. So John of God has all these followers that have followed him to the ends of the earth. Literally, they're still standing by him. Even though these women are like, hey, after he basically sexually assaulted me and felt me up, I reported him and nobody did anything. Nobody would arrest him. Well, now he was actually convicted on 4 different charges 4 times, but a lot of the other complaints against him, they didn't stick because the statute of limitations had expired. Because guess what jacked up rule they have in Brazil? Now, women, we think that we don't have rights in the United States of America, that our laws don't really protect us, because we saw how they don't protect us when it comes to abortion. We'll talk about that later. But John of God, the reason why he's only facing just a few years, oh, and by the way, John of God was sentenced to something like 20 some odd years.
19 years and 4 months.
19 years and 4 months in federal prison for four crimes. But the problem was during the pandemic, when they put it out there, his lawyer said, because of the pandemic and quarantine, can he be able to do house arrest at home? He has like a multi-thousand square foot estate that he lives on, and he had more than 20 multi-million-dollar properties across the world because he was made so many millions of dollars that he's staying in one of his rich compounds on house arrest with an ankle monitor, still dressed up to the nines and still wearing his gangster pinky ring and still trying to act like he was doing the work of the Lord and that he just needs to sit at home. So now he's sitting at home. During the quarantine, he was quarantined like the rest of us. So basically the victims are like, if he was in quarantine the same time we were, how is that a prison sentence? So John of God was basically getting an atonement. But do you know what he said to the cameras when they asked him how he felt like, what he felt about this? He said, well, just like Jesus, I'm being persecuted, but I'm doing the Lord's work. So just pray for me. Never once did he say, I'm sorry for the rapey rapes. Never once did he say, I'm sorry for sexually assaulting. Never once did he say, I'm sorry for jacking off and having my semen in somebody's hand and rubbing it all over their bodies and making them think that it was holy oil. Anyway, moving on. That was the first atonement. So John of God, he's not really atoning. He came to atonement, but guess what? The compound where they healed all the people is completely dead. They have about 75 people that are still there that decided to stay. The other parishioners that were supportive of John of God that now say that John is gone, but we have to still keep the church rolling because we have to bring in the money. Now let's move on to, we're going to save R. Kelly for last. We're going to move on to Ron Jeremy. Now, this sexual predator was known for his sexual prowess, ladies and gentlemen. He made millions of dollars off of his penis. Apparently, he has a 9.5-inch penis. Take the kids out of the room if you don't want to hear this. He was a porn star from way back in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. I guess because he was still getting it up. And maybe even the early 2000s when he became super famous, when porn went to the internet and everybody could just watch it in their homes instead of watching it on television. They can watch it on their phones. Well, Ron Jeremy is in California court right now facing 30 counts of sexual assault. He's our adult film star with this long, dating back from 1996, involving more than 21 women and girls over the course of 2 decades. He's now 68 years old and he pleaded not guilty. Ladies out there, when you see a sexual predator, and he's making money from being a porn king, he's making free money off of his penis, ladies and gentlemen. He's getting paid thousands of dollars by the minute to have sex with adult women who are volunteering, who are willing to give it up on camera and to also make thousands of dollars per minute. So why come, how come, and why do you need to rape 21 women and girls? Ron Jeremy, this is your time for atonement. The Los Angeles County Courts, they're not showing that trial on television, so we can't watch the play-by-play because there are no cameras in the courtroom. But I'm going to give you all of the information from the trial. Moving on from that sexual assault, that alleged sexual criminal, we're going to now go to our favorite criminal that gives us all the juicy things that we know that you go to hell for. If there was a part in the Bible that said things that you're going to go to hell for, I think that at least 17 things that R. Kelly is accused of are things that the top 17 reasons you're going to go to hell. And ladies and gentlemen, let's start off with number 1. We're going to start off with saying, Why is R. Kelly so mad at court? First, he was looking very stoic for the first few days of the trial. And if you're wondering why you haven't been able to see any footage from the trial, it's because the judge decided not to make this go on live TV like it did for OJ. Nope. They don't want you to be able to see the victims. We don't want any victim shaming going around here because right now it needs to just be villain shaming. We're going to shame the crap out of Robert Kelly. You know, who I like to call the predator, the rapist. I call him the sexual assaulter because remember, ladies and gentlemen, the mere fact that he was married to Aaliyah and she was a minor means that he was Mr. Rapey because she was not able to consent. Anyway, we already talked about Aaliyah. Let's talk about what was his last witness statement that happened last Friday. Baby, it came out. Last Friday, the very first male accuser accused and testified Robert Kelly of sexually assaulting him. Now, here's where I don't do my victim shaming, but I'm going to tell you what I'm really thinking about this. I'm going to break down the story of what happened on the witness stand, then I'm going to tell you what I think. Now, the witness gets on up there and he says that he went to a concert. He really wanted to be famous and be a star. We already know that's the story with all of them. They always want to be famous and they want to get there the fastest way, except for just using raw talent. We're the Berry Gordies when you need them. Anyway. So he says that he met with R. Kelly, and over the course of several times of their meetings, at the first encounter that they had, R. Kelly basically put it to him, I know you want to be a star. How bad do you want it? What are you willing to do? That seems to be what he says to everybody that's a little bit thirsty for fame. But R. Kelly had a different MO. His modus operandi was this. According to his accuser, which was the male witness, the witness says, R. Kelly said, exactly what are you willing to do to be famous? The accuser says, I'm willing to do anything. R. Kelly allegedly responds, okay, when you say anything, exactly how far are you willing to go for fame? The accuser allegedly says, well, this is what he says, so it's not allegedly. The accuser says, I'll do whatever it takes. Robert Kelly, the sexual assaulter, and then Mr. Rapey said this. Okay, well, here's where the story gets kind of dicey, and I'm going to pause right there and put a pin in that point. I believe everything up until that point. From what the witness said, but you can't believe everything a witness says because sometimes the recollection is not always accurate. And sometimes they really just don't want to tell you their part in the shenanigans. Here's what the witness says happened, then I'll tell you what I think what happened. Witness says, at the point where Robert Kelly says, will you do anything? And he says, I'll do anything. Robert Kelly says, well then, let me do this, and unzips the witness's pants, drops down on his knees, and gives him oral sex. Ladies and gentlemen, turn down the volume at your jobs if you're listening to this at work. And if you're listening to this with this in front of your children, tell your children to get out of the room. They shouldn't be listening to me anyway. I'm too grown and too tall to be too slick to be letting them listen in the morning. But apparently Robert Kelly got down on his knees and gave a blowjob to this minor boy who he was allegedly grooming. And allegedly, the accuser says he didn't like it because he's not a homosexual. She said, well, I don't like this. I'm not really feeling it. So Robert Kelly gets up off his knees and said, well, just keep this between us. You know, we're brothers now, right? And then the witness says, yeah, we're brothers now. Then after that, he kept going to hang out with Mr. Kelly. And then I guess the attorney says, well, did you ever get to become a star like you wanted to? Did you ever get to drop that album? Did he ever do anything to help your career? And the witness says emphatically, no. Now, that's what the witness testimony was. Now, let me go ahead and tell you the Nyanza testimony. Now, I'm going to testify to this. Now, the witness also has no problem talking about how bad it is that Robert Kelly did this. But let's just take it one step further. The reality is this. If you are a superstar of the world, talking about I Believe I Can Fly, and at that moment you had already sung I Can Fly on Oprah. I think they won the Oscar for Best Song. And then you got an Academy, you got a whole bunch of stuff. You got albums and albums and albums and you're super Hollywood. You're not going to drop to your knees from some regular dude that you just met at a concert and be like, hey, let me give you a BJ. It's not happening. I don't believe R. Kelly did that part. What I think happened was this. When R. Kelly put it to this young would-be talented guy to say, hey, exactly what would you do? Do you notice that the witness did say, R. Kelly said, what would you do for fame? R. Kelly didn't say, what would you let me do to you? Remember that? Words matter. So what I believe is a guy said, I believe R. Kelly said, well, show me that you want it. Get down on your knees. And he's like, but I'm not gay. And the guy said, but you said that you would do anything. And this is what the Pied Piper wants you to go down on this pipe. Ooh, did you hear that? The Pied Piper said, get on the pipe. Well, that's what I think happened. And then he got on his knees. And then I think he probably vomited if he really wasn't a homosexual. It was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this. And then he changed his mind, said, I don't really like this. And R. Kelly was like, well, that's just okay. It's between me and you. And we're brothers now. Because guess what? He kept on coming back. And if you had just done some lascivious act that takes you out of your element, that you were like, oh my God, I can't believe this. Why are you going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth? You know, like Aaliyah's song, back, forth and forth. But this was not the song. This was him and R. Kelly going back and forth. So I don't believe the accuser all the way. I believe him 80%, but that other 20%, I really believe that he got down on his knees. Let's go ahead and talk about the other part that'll send you straight to hell if you're R. Kelly. Now, the other one, I believe this is not, I'm not victim shaming here again, but I also believe that there's a difference between women and girls. Girls don't know and women do. Apparently, there was some 19-year-old woman who, this is where we come into the problem with R. Kelly and his racketeering charges and his violation of the Mann Act, which is taking a child across state lines in order to have them do some prostitution. Anyway, there was a 19-year-old accuser who was the third witness who said that R. Kelly gave her herpes. Yes. Like he blew her up, and basically, let me tell you what the rundown that she gave. Her witness account was that yes, she was one of those other ones that want to be a star too. I guess he was like, okay, well, you gonna give him, and listen, apparently R. Kelly likes to receive oral sex because she didn't say she gave him oral sex on the witness stand, but she said apparently when he said, what are you willing to do? I guess she was willing to get on her back and do whatever it took to become a star. So she did that. Unfortunately for her, she said the next day, baby, she woke up feeling chills and she felt like she had a cold, and then she felt like she had a fever. And the next thing you know, she had all kind of sores and bumps popping out all over the inside of her mouth. She said it was disgusting and it looked disgusting. That's what she testified to. And I Googled it. I looked it up on the internet to see exactly what does herpes all over your mouth look like. And apparently herpes of the mouth only comes when you did something with your mouth. So maybe she was on those knees. She got up and got herpes all over her mouth. On the witness stand, she testified that R. Kelly never ever told her that he was infected with a sexually transmitted disease. He never told her about herpes, but for several years prior to that encounter that she had with him, he was receiving medication, which is what his doctor testified to, giving him several prescriptions for herpes medicine. Now, if he's getting all these prescriptions from his doctor, and he's giving these girls herpes, that is a felony, ladies and gentlemen. You're not allowed to burn somebody up and unknowingly. That's what usually people think about AIDS and HIV and giving somebody HIV. But this person apparently, Robert Kelly, spread herpes to the world, honey. He's like, I believe I can fly and I believe I can burn you up at the same time. Send you to the moon and to the clinic. So she's upset because she felt like Robert Kelly, he did this to her. She barely had sexual encounters with him in both Texas and in California. And at the time, I'm not sure if she was 19 at the time or if she was 17. But either way, if she had sexual relationships with R. Kelly in New York and in California, which in New York is exactly where the federal case is being held against Robert, then he's violated the Mann Act and he can be put up on blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I don't have the same level of empathy and compassion as I should probably for the women who are 19 and up. I guess I should probably have more empathy because she was 19, but there's something about being in high school versus being a grown up with your own car, your own apartment that's able to fly around and take your own self to a concert and walk your own self backstage. The other little girls that were accosted by R. Kelly that were sold into sex slavery or whatever he was doing, or allegedly sold into sex slavery, and I guess he was the only buyer. He was the seller and the buyer of the same tale. But R. Kelly's actions against minors are much more tantamount to going to hell for than I think against the adult women. I mean, ladies, that's where R. Kelly's legal counsel, I'm not sure whether or not he's going to take the stand. I would advise him to shut up and say nothing. You better play a Martha Stewart and don't say a damn thing, because all you're going to do is look dumb. And apparently he is dumb. His prior counsel that represented him like maybe 10 years ago, one of his cases, said he's not very bright. Now we already know his eyes are very close together. That's why he's always wearing sunglasses. His mama may have had some alcohol while she was pregnant, because that's the disease that you get when your mama drinks when she's pregnant. Your eyes are really close together. We need to talk to R. Kelly's mama. We need to talk to P. Diddy's mama because his eyes are close together too. But I love you, Diddy, anyway. But R. Kelly, I think that the women, if you're a grown up, you consented to that, boo. You did. That man, if he raped you, say he raped you. But if you got down on your knees and let him stick his private parts in your mouth and you didn't choose to bite it off because you didn't want it in your mouth, then I would have to say maybe you consented a little bit because you consented to becoming a music star. You wanted to become a talented genius. You want to become the Mrs. Right. You wanted to become something to make you go backstage with a predator whom you already knew had married 15-year-old Aaliyah, had her have a shmush-mortion at a time when shmush-mortions were legal, I guess, in Illinois. But all those women out there, you knew that he was a predator, honey. Even though in the 2002, he had 6 counts of child pornography that were all dismissed against him that he was able to win. So even if he had all of those counts dismissed or he was able to win on those, you still knew that there was something lascivious about Robert Kelly that said that you should probably stay away from him. And that you also knew that if he was in those trials and coming out of court daily on a daily basis and still had those young women that were waiting for him. When he was coming out of court with that, I love you, R. Kelly says, sign me up. One of the young girls in the video said that's how she met R. Kelly. When he was coming out of his other trial, every day she was standing there with her son like, I love you, R. Kelly. And he's like, baby, come on over here, hook up with me. And they ended up hooking up. And now, what is she, a sex slave? I'm just saying. I'm having to get this all in really quickly because you can say what you want to about, these witnesses, but every witness it apparently has been traumatized by Robert Kelly. The adult women, I'm sure you are traumatized, but it's going to be hard pressed for them to be able to find a conviction with the adult women because consent is something that is a great defense for Robert Kelly. Robert Kelly's defense team, they got their work cut out for him when it comes to the minors because they're statutory rape. And let me explain something to you that I want to say very briefly. And I'm not familiar with all the laws in Illinois, but I'm going to have those laws to you right back when we get back from this next segment. But in Texas, when you have statutory rape, that means you violated the statute saying that any person under this certain age is not allowed to have sexual encounters with a male or sexual relationship with a male or female that is an adult, an 18-year-old. And in the state of Texas, it's like an 18-year-old that's still in high school and you got a couple of months until after you graduate or whatever. But either way, that basically means that if you are a 14-year-old, let's just take 15-year-old. Let's take 15-year-old Aaliyah as our example, since that's the one person that we actually know was statutorily raped by R. Kelly. So if she was in Texas, then Texas would say whether or not Robert Kelly knew how old his victim was, it doesn't matter. Whether or not the victim lied to Robert Kelly, pretending that she was 18, 19, or 20, but she was really 16 or 15 or 14, it doesn't matter. By statute alone, neither her lying nor his ignorance is an excuse to bypass the statute that says that an adult cannot have sex with a minor, period, because the minor cannot consent legally to having a sexual relationship with a grown-up. So that means that Robert Kelly, with all those misdeeds, the alleged misdeeds that he committed against the minors, you're going to the slammer, Robert. And I don't know how long you're going. Hopefully you're going longer than John of God. Now you're not going to be locked up on house arrest. But R. Kelly did make the statement last week when he was coming out of court, when he seemed like he was really, really, really upset about what the male witness was saying. He said, oh, it's all going to come out. It's all going to come out. Oh, yes, it's coming out, Mr. Kelly. It's coming out. It's coming out very well. It's coming out because everybody's telling on you. And everybody's telling, and even your doctor had to tell that you're giving everybody herpes, knowing full well you have medicine. And I believe his manager was one of the people that were picking up the medicine and dropping off to the girls that got burnt up. Anyway, I'll talk to you more in the next segment. Stay tuned. It was way too much news to get in. Man, oh man, oh man, oh man. I don't know how Oprah did it in 1 hour. She wasn't talking as fast as me, and she wasn't saying stuff as good as I was. But y'all know this is the time for atonement. So let me go. Let me just leave these running. So my next story, I really want to talk about I need to talk about
Here come the feds, and here come the
I need to
feds.
talk about the ex-Colts football player and Ohio State quarterback Art Schlichter.
Okay.
Released from federal prison in Ohio. You know, that's my husband. Ohio. A lot of stuff seems to be going on in Ohio. We're going to talk about a former football star, quarterback star, who just got out of federal prison for making millions off of a ticket scam. And now he's on 5 years of probation or parole. That's what you call it. Parole, probation, whatever. Whatever is pro something. Whatever it is, you got to wear an ankle bracelet like John of God. And I think that R. Kelly, is he on bond or is he in prison?
R. Kelly? Oh.
Is he on bond? I think he's still, he wasn't given a bond, was he?
I don't think so. I think it was
Yeah, no bond for him. He's still in the jail talking to his lawyers through the plexiglass with all the bad breath that's stuck to the window. We're going to talk about him, and I also want to talk about
Yeah. his
Dumb
bail
but
is
oh,
denied.
I got it. Oh, we need to get to I don't think I can get to the Elizabeth Holmes trial today.
Yeah.
We're gonna spend more time.
You have 15 to 20 minutes to speak on all that you want.
Okay, so we're gonna do.
Because this is gonna basically.
We need to do abortion,
Okay.
and we're gonna not talk about Trump's employees to test. Well, no, we'll keep the Trump employees. We'll keep the abortion,
Your
and
two top ones, and then the rest you can bring up if there's time.
okay, we'll keep it the Delta Airlines for last, and Elizabeth. We'll do Elizabeth Holmes and Delta Airlines last. Did y'all see that? We're getting ready for our next segment. But what y'all think about R. Kelly? He's so whack. You know, somebody's daddy should have beat R. Kelly's butt by now. You know, after that, I mean, I don't really understand why none of these daddies out there caught a charge. Because if I had seen R. Kelly at a concert, I would have been up there with blazing lights. Let me tell you something. At least throw a taser at him or something. Do something. Don't just let your daughter get sexually assaulted and peed on by a grown man on video and then pretend that it's not her when you know it is, and then take money from the guy who did it. You know, I just think, oh my God, he's such a predator. I almost feel like we should just fly our butts up to Chicago, up to New York, just so we can haze him on his way out of the trial every day. You're a scumbag. We can't stand you. Just like that white guy did jumping out the truck. Where's the white guy jumping out the truck and accosting a person, somebody when you need him? He's on the run in Ohio, isn't he? Did that guy no, he's from Colorado.
Who?
The guy that accosted the NBC correspondent doing the report. You know, that couldn't happen. Listen, he picked the right black man for that mess. Because anybody else would have come right out of pocket. Screw this job. I don't need to work at NBC. Let me beat this white boy up on national
Yep,
TV.
Ohio.
You got lots of stuff going on in Ohio. So, you know what? You know, dumb old butt Texas support. You know what?
15 seconds.
Okay, we're going to go in. We're going to keep this same. You want to keep this live feed running, or do you want to break the segment up and come back?
We're going to keep it.
Okay, we're just going to keep these going. So we got 15 seconds to come back in. Y'all hear listen, that should be the police. That's Here Comes the Fed. That's the sirens right in time for our segment. I need to go out of this note and come back in. All right, here we go. Oh, but I needed to say something about it's the 20-year anniversary of the Iraq War today.
Today?
It was yesterday. I'm going to say one sentence. No, I won't.
Bring it
You see
on.
that? I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to talk. We will not talk about the war in Iraq. We'll talk about...
Okay, you ready?
Oh, gosh. Okay.
You're on there.
Now, where am I? Okay, y'all, I'm back. And listen, I just really... Okay, this is and my producer said we're not going to talk about that, but this is the 20th anniversary of the war in Iraq, a war that we spent 20 years in. We had no business in. That's killed 2,500 U.S. military soldiers that died in vain. And we spent $2.5 trillion fighting a war in a country that we had no business being in the first place, because you cannot convert another country to your politics. If they're authoritarian, let them be authoritarian. It's not hurting nobody. It's not affecting anybody over here. But the United States should bring all those Afghanis that assisted the U.S. troops over there to the United States to live, or find them permanent residence somewhere in the area. I believe that we're finding them permanent homes in in the Arabian Gulf. Okay, now back to, let's talk about how whack Texas is. The Lone Star State stands alone for stupidity. Did you hear me? We have a governor that's an idiot, who doesn't want to wear a mask and who catches the coronavirus and then wants to make an anti-masking mandate saying don't wear masks in schools because he's dumb. Then we have a lieutenant governor that likes to be brought up on charges and support the dumb governor at the top. And then we have those dumb state representatives down there in Austin that decided to go ahead and take away Roe versus Wade in Texas. That's essentially what they did. Now, if you're not a proponent of a woman's right to choose, then you can choose not to listen to this segment. Do you hear me? I'm asking you to make your choice immediately. But as a woman, and a woman who believes that my conversations with my provider, my doctor, my physician, my nurse are all conversations about my own body that I need to get to have in a private setting. What my doctor and I discuss is no one else's business. Okay, so my doctor should not have to tell the state of Texas that I got pregnant and I no longer want to be pregnant for whatever reason that is. Now, unfortunately for dumb butt Texas and those dumb butt Republicans down there in Austin, they decided that during cases of rape and incest, you know, for those of you who don't have a dictionary handy, let me go ahead and enlighten you. If the father decides to rape his 12-year-old daughter in Texas, and she gets pregnant by her daddy, and she also has brothers, and he's raping them too, well, those brothers may not get pregnant, but that 12-year-old daughter, she's pregnant. Well, in Texas, when her belly starts showing and she's never had sex with anybody else other than her dad, who's been raping her since she was 11, now that she's pregnant in Texas, and she pops out big, and all of a sudden in the 7th grade, she's walking around looking like she's 4 months pregnant, or that she has some huge tumor in her belly. And when people say, oh my goodness, have you had sex with anybody? She, yes, my dad has been raping me every week, every time he comes into my room. Well, guess what? The school can turn in daddy for incest and rape, but we're still going to make that little girl have her daddy's child. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Texas. That's the new law here. Regardless of rape or incest, you will have that baby. Oh, your brother rapes you and bends you over and impregnates you with twins. You're going to have that baby. Oh, your uncle rapes you and decides that, and he impregnates you and gives you herpes like he's R. Kelly. Oh, you're going to have that baby. Now, the mommy and daddy are still married. And when the baby is born, because you couldn't have an abortion in Texas, and the baby comes out all deformed because the daddy had a child with his daughter, and now the daughter is now the mama and the sister of her own sibling. Come on now. In Texas, you're going to have that baby. So forget all the mental health issues that we like to pretend that we want to help people with in our state. Forget all this therapy, all this, you need to go to your guidance counselor for this. We're going to make sure you have all the mental health issues that you can muster up in one lifetime. Because ladies and gentlemen, if you're a girl that falls victim to a gang rape at a party, or you gang raped by the football team or the basketball team at your college or your high school, well, you may not know if one of those 5 or 6 boys raped you. You don't know who the daddy is, but if you're pregnant, you're going to have that baby in Texas. And guess what else? Once you have that baby, we're not going to want to give you any government assistance to take care of that child that you no longer want. And guess what else? We're also not going to help you get any placement for that child. We're going to force you to every single day carry that baby in your belly. That's the result of a gang rape, or the result of a rape by some member of your family or your own father. We're going to force you to carry that baby for 9 months. And when the baby comes out looking just like you and your daddy, or deformed, or having 3 arms or 4 legs, we're going to then say, take care of that baby. Oh, and don't drop that baby off at the fire station, because we will find you and match you back up with that deformed child. And we might put your daddy in prison for a little while, but he will get out. And guess what? Once he gets out, he'll still be able to come around you and your baby that he made. Oh, and mama, if you're still married to that guy, you'll be then taking care of your child/grandchild. Isn't that how we like to do things in Texas? I think not. Any one of you out there who can hear my voice needs to think about the reality of this. This new law in Texas effectively overturned Roe versus Wade, which has been the supreme law of the land since I don't know what year, 1970 something, longer than I've been alive. But all I have to say is this is an affront to the black and brown and poor women across the state, the underserved community. Abortion has now become a right of the privileged. Let me give you some background on the abortion law. Abortion law was created for Republicans. In the state of New York, a very wealthy white woman who had a children's television show, she had several children, and she's like, you know what? I run a children's show. I'm happily married with my husband. We have several children, and I'm pregnant again. I just don't want to have a baby. And in the state of New York, there was nowhere that she could legally have an abortion. So what did she do? Her and her husband, they flew to Paris. Yes, they did. They flew to Paris on the Concorde, got mama an abortion, came back to the United States of America, had a press conference, because they're white privilege, had a press conference and said, why in America, if my husband and I have decided that we do not want to have a 17th child, I'm exaggerating, should I have to fly to another country just to be able to terminate my pregnancy when my husband and I made the decision as, number one, a married couple? Number two, she said, what my doctor and my husband and I make the decision to do is no one else's business. And she was right 50 years ago, and she's right now. And also, If I don't want to have a baby, I shouldn't have to have a baby. And before the baby can even come out and take care of itself, it's just a blob of blood. I'm just trying to tell you, you can hear a heartbeat. I mean, not to tell my own business, I had 3 miscarriages, and you might hear a heartbeat one week, and the next time you go back to the doctor, you're not going to hear a heartbeat. Well, that's just the way sometimes your body does. But what they're saying is after 6 weeks, once you hear a heartbeat, you cannot have an abortion. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. Then what will now be the point of having a procedure called an amniocentesis done when you're like 5 or 6 months pregnant to determine whether or not your baby's going to have some severe birth defects, which would make you want to need to terminate the pregnancy? Because guess what? In Texas, okay, your baby's going to be born with 6 arms and 18 legs and no heart. No, you're going to have a heart because there's a heartbeat, but no lungs. We're going to have to find some lungs from a bird and translate and put them into your baby. Oh, but you're still going to have that baby. So what kind of quality of life is that for the child? What kind of quality of life is that for the mother and the father? It's no quality of life. It's not. So the reality is, while the white men and women, Congress or state representatives down in Austin were putting their own moral compass on the rest of America, at the very same time, they said, but guess what? You cannot terminate a pregnancy, but you can get a gun without a permit. You can go ahead and shoot up a whole school of people because you don't need to have a license or a permit to carry a weapon. Go shoot somebody and kill them dead, but don't terminate a pregnancy from a baby who cannot take care of itself outside of the mother's womb. But if they have a heartbeat, they're a living human. Come on now, shut up somebody. Because somebody tell these white people that they got to go back home. And I'm saying the white people because I don't know any black people on the Republican side of the state legislature who voted for that. And if you do know a black Republican down at the state house that voted for that, please let me know who they are so I can blast their dumb butts. Because guess what? What will happen is this. When abortion now is the right of only the privileged, it will be, if that happens in my family, if something crazy like that happens in my family or any of the upper middle class or higher class people's families, if something goes down that ain't supposed to happen, I guarantee you those people will have the financial means and the resources and the wherewithal to get on an airplane, go to a neighboring state, have an abortion, and then come back home to Texas. So that means all of the people of privilege will be able to terminate a pregnancy. But all the people in the hood and all the people in the CUNY homes and all the people in Section 8 houses and all the people that can't even afford to pay their rent will now be stuck with a baby who now they can't even afford to feed, and the government doesn't even want to give them any assistance to help them out. So how can you be the federal government and say, or the state government and say, we're not here to take care of your children? And what they did was they thought the black women and the brown women were having all these kids and not wanting to take care of them. They really thought that these people were just trying to get extra checks for the government on their income tax babies. That's what they thought. And then they decided to cap it out at the number of children. Was it like 3 or 4 kids you can have? After 4 kids, you can't ask for no more income tax. I'm sorry. Getting a measly $1,800 is not something that a woman would decide to have a whole baby on just so she can get that much a year from the federal government. I'm sorry. Who made up that lie? Anyway, if you have all these black and brown women that are now going to be forced to have these babies, and these white women that are now forced to have these children that they don't want, that they never wanted, and you're not even forcing the man who impregnated them to pay his child support on time and early, why don't you put the man in jail who got them pregnant? Why are you saying that anybody that drives somebody to go even seek out an abortion, you going to jail too? Let me tell you, they put this in the hands of the private citizens. They're asking for private citizens, if you know of someone who's interested in getting an abortion or somebody who's trying to take somebody to an abortion clinic or drive anywhere, that you can file a civil lawsuit against them. Let me tell you something. And now here's what's going to happen. Somebody out there is going to get their butt beat. They're gonna file that civil case. One of those people out there with those that have been picketing these people. The funny thing is that you got all these people saying, we don't want abortion, but we have our guns. We need to keep our guns so we can blow you away without question. We love everybody. We want to take care of the unborn, but these same symptoms don't want to take care of the grown born. You don't want to give anybody any extra time to stay in their homes that they're going to be evicted from, with the eviction moratorium going to lapse. The Supreme Court let the eviction moratorium lapse. They let the abortion rule in Texas lapse. They're sitting down on their butts because they have that Justice Brett Kavanaugh, Mr. Sexual Assaulter, alleged sexual assaulter in chief. And I do believe Dr. Blasey Ford was sexually assaulted by him. So you have a Supreme Court justice, and you have that new woman up there that says, oh, I don't care about rape and incest. Abortion is wrong, but let me give you your gun so you can kill somebody. I think it's about the lobbyists. If you are a woman who believes that abortion is not right, then it's not right for you. If you're a man that you don't believe abortion is not right, then get with a woman who believes the same thing as you. But don't you take yourself over there and tell other women what not to do and what to do with their bodies. And here's the problem I have. It's all these men are out there making these rules for women. You state representatives out there that were trying to leave about the voting rights. I didn't see you trying to leave about the daggum abortion rights. Were the men hopping on those private planes to leave the state of Texas to make sure that abortion rule didn't pass? I don't think so. Where were the protesters about that stuff? Is it seem like only the women have to stick up for the women? Because I think a lot of the state representatives on the white side, which is the Republican side, were out there voting for this bit of archaic ruling. So if you're in Texas and you're raped by your dad, you're going to have the baby. And your dad is going to be the daddy and the grandfather. And your mother will be what will the mommy be? The step mommy as well as the grandmommy? I don't know. But all of y'all are going to live in one happy, emotionally dysfunctional family for the rest of your lives, because the state of Texas believes that you should have to look at the product of an incestuous relationship and a rape every day and nurse the baby, take care of the baby, and then explain to the child how they got here. Tell me this. Has the state legislatures that put this law into place ever thought about what will happen to the child who says, when they say, Mommy, where's my daddy? Well, honey, your daddy is Pawpaw. Pawpaw's your daddy. What do you mean? Well, your daddy your daddy raped me when I was 12 and I got pregnant with you, and your grandma pretends to be your grandma, but she's really just your stepmother. Because I'm sorry, I'm her daughter. So do you really not think that child is going to have some mental, emotional breakdown? All of those children that are going to be born to these mothers who did not choose to have them on their own, who got maybe raped, gang raped, incestuized, if that's a word, I just made up a new word. If they got incestuized by their uncle or by their daddy or by some crazy man that just want to stick it to them and they know that they're related, then those men should be forced to give those men those children. Why don't we do that? If you have a baby that you didn't want, here's what I say to these women out there. As the lawyer, I'm not giving you legal advice, but here's what I would do if it was me. If it was me, I'd be like, okay, now that I've had the baby, I'm going to immediately terminate my parental rights according to this child and give the child to the state. Let the state of Texas take care of the baby, since the state of Texas forced me to have the baby. And I think that they need to go ahead and create brand new buildings. They need to go ahead and give $1 billion to the foster care system, because there are going to be so many more foster children that the state of Texas already doesn't take care of very well. They don't provide enough mental health support. They don't provide enough financial support. And when these kids get out of high school and they're pushed out there at 18 years old, they don't have any of the support systems they need from an actual family that can take care of them. The state of Texas is going to abandon them. You need to go send all of those kids the addresses of the state representatives that voted this shenanigans into law in Texas, and let them take care of all of these children that are products of rape and incest. So we're going to cut to commercial on that note, because I feel like I went along too long. I got a whole lot to say after this next segment. Bye, y'all. Come back out of this too.